Welcome to the Money and Meaning Show with Jeff Bernier, a show dedicated to helping you gain the confidence and freedom to lead a life of personal significance and help you get your actions and resources in alignment with what matters most.
Hello, my name is Jeff Bernier, and welcome to the Money and Meaning Show. I'm so glad that you all decided to join us today for a conversation that we have monthly about money and meaning. And as we so frequently do, we bring on guests that can shed some light on various aspects of how do we have a meaningful, fulfilling second act, if you will. And of course, we combine that with more technical topics around wealth management, financial planning, and things of that nature. And, you know, I'm really excited about our guest today, as I'm often am. So let me properly introduce Sherry, and then we'll get cranking with a conversation that I'm sure you'll find valuable, and I'm looking forward to. So let me introduce Sherry. Sherry Finkel Murphy is founder and CEO of Madrina Molly, LLC, a content company and platform that creates and distributes financial and longevity planning education through powerful storytelling. Sherry is a certified financial planner professional, chartered financial consultant, and retirement income certified professional. She's got over 40 years and multiple careers and excels in helping clients fund both retirement and continuous reinvention. And I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about that. She focuses on the midlife generations and delivers financial and longevity planning education in a way that's easy to understand and consumable. She's got a lot of cool information, so I'm going to just jump right in with her. But welcome, Sherry. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I am very excited to chat with you.
Glad to have you. And, you know, this is designed to be sort of an informal discussion, but I love to just start with a little bit about you personally. So do you mind just sharing for our audience a little bit about you and your family and kind of what you're all about?
Not at all. As a matter of fact, you made me sound so good on paper that I love that. Who is this person? I think that where I'd like to begin is that I am part of the cohort that I serve. I call that cohort women of a certain agency. We are members of the newly formed triple-decker club sandwich generation, where, and because it is the first time in history that 4 and 5 generations are living contemporaneously, I am now among those who are sandwiched among parents and myself and children and grandchildren. So we're spreading that sandwich kind of thin.
Right.
And I describe myself as, in addition to all of those things you indicated, I am a woman who has her mother's spare walker in the boot and her grandchild's spare child seat in the back seat of the same SUV. And
Yeah.
I ping pong back and forth looking for, just doing everything at once. It's asking the universe for flexibility as I live a fulfilling family life, launch a business, be a good partner to my husband, who also has his own business. All I ask is for a good night's sleep, and then that's what I need to get going to keep it on track.
Yeah, we can relate, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. So tell me a little bit about your career path, how you found yourself at this point in your career creating resources and advice for your people.
So as a financial planner, and I completed the sale of my financial planning practice at the end of last year. As a financial planner, I found a very consistent theme among my clients. I'll describe them as alpha women, some partnered, some not partnered, for whatever reason. And they were women who wanted to take charge of their second half and didn't have the tools to do it. And this very consistent theme of women 50 plus, only 16% indicate they have any kind of financial education. And that's the same cohort that's going to control $30 trillion by the end of the decade. So I'm thinking, we need to be able to do something about it. And they'd come to me with incredible shame around money. And
a lot of these clients came to you with shame.
They come to me with shame.
Wow.
I'm sure you're going to tell me I'm doing everything wrong. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't understand money. I abdicated responsibility to my spouse. Now I'm a widow. Now I'm divorced. Now I'm whatever. I never paid attention to it. Help, or is there no hope for me? I'm a hot mess and I'm just going to remain a hot mess. And my message to these women is it's only too late if you don't start now. Secondly, we have a lot more runway than we think. And I'm not making that up. That is totes legit. That if we reframe the second 50 as an opportunity, there is plenty of time to understand what you don't understand, make up for lost time saving and putting financial pieces on the chessboard where they belong. All of those things that I know you do very well for your clients as well. It's not a message of hope. It is a very pragmatic message. I'm super nerdy, and I'll get back to how I got here in a second. I wander around, but I get back on track. I'm super nerdy, and I love the metrics. And one of the metrics that is a little bothersome to me is that media quotes actuarial numbers for our longevity as approximately 79 for men and 82 for women, Americans. And what they don't say is that that's an actuarial number for a 50-year-old. If you're healthy and you're going to 65, by the time you're 65, those numbers are 85 and 87.
Right.
So now if you're a woman and you're 50, you're looking at 37 years. And if you stop viewing your process as sort of a deteriorating thing, or maybe I should say, if you approach aging as a process of deterioration, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. Yeah. You're going like this.
Say, it's too old to worry about my health. It's too old to worry about money. I'm too old to do this.
Yeah.
Well, then it's a fait accompli, right?
That's right. That's right.
But if you start looking at it, and I always get the pronunciation wrong, thanatologically, which looks at the number of years you have left, and you say, oh my gosh, 37, that's 2 careers. I can do anything I want, especially since for this cohort, only the last 5 to 10 years is old age, in air quotes, whatever constitutes old age. Yeah. So for me, rolling back, I had, a bunch of coincidences, but just as my stepdaughter announced she was pregnant with her second child, and she said, I want to role model being a great mom and a great businesswoman, I turned to my husband and I said, oh, we have to help. She has no idea what she just said. But she's in Ohio with the little ones, and I'm in Saratoga Springs, New York with 96-and-a-half-year-old mom.
Yeah.
And we made the decision to be flexible and to live in both places, which I'd like to revisit as we chat, because I know you had Ryan Frederick on, and location is so important to longevity planning.
Yeah, no question. So you had a traditional financial planning practice and had a lot of your clients were this cohort, and you saw a need that you could address more completely or with deeper conversations or more encouragement and more training and coaching for that particular niche that you see. And it's not a niche, it's a huge cohort, as we just
mentioned. It's a huge
mentioned.
cohort. And
it's not really a niche, but it's a huge problem that could use some counsel.
So there's not necessarily, there's a lot of talking, there's not necessarily something to provide in the way of financial instrument initially. And I know that a lot of financial planners, and I'm just going to be real candid here, they have an obligation to run profitable practices. So they weren't in a position to help my cohort who want education first. And I know this because I am this person. I love understanding before I execute anything. I'm going to dig down into it and say, I need to feel smart before I do this.
Yeah.
And so you could argue that I'm in the business of making women feel smart. How to become good with money. Just as we were making this decision and being flexible, that was when FINRA announced, okay, financial advisors, everybody back in the office 51% of the time.
Oh, gotcha.
And I confess, I had a little bit of a freak out.
Yeah.
So my hand was forced.
Well, and most of us got into this type of industry because we were entrepreneurial anyway. We wanted to have the freedom to work with who we wanted to work with, when we wanted to work, where we wanted to work, and then all of a sudden the rules may have changed on you.
Yeah.
Right at the time you needed to be multiple places.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thought was, open an office, which struck me as very lonely, or take the message to a larger audience. And I think that the positioning is, I have achieved financial freedom. I have specialty knowledge. I don't want to pull up the ladder behind me. How can I democratize and demystify financial and longevity planning information for a larger portion of this cohort? How does one use the internet to expand your reach? And how do you move from individual appointments with individual clients to reaching a larger audience efficiently so that more people can benefit? And that was the logic behind Madrina Molly.
Beautiful. Well, let's talk about that for a moment. So Madrina Molly is your vehicle to try to share and coach at scale as people, or these ladies in particular, are going through these challenges and have a community essentially to learn.
Yes, it is a community. It is built on a community platform, and it is a subscription intentionally priced far less expensively than financial planning, fee-only financial planning.
Right.
But it is of concern that too many people get their money knowledge from finfluencers who call themselves money experts and are not money experts on the internet.
Right.
And so the idea is that these people have access asynchronously to me via posts and bi-weekly Zoom meetings where they can ask questions and learn things. I have little mini courses, conceptual things that maybe aren't in the financial planning textbook, if you will.
Right.
Because the data isn't there. And the reason the data isn't there is that this is the first cohort. When you think of these women who went to college and went into the workforce in the 80s, this is that first cohort that is experiencing the kind of retirement struggles that 20th century men experienced when they got their gold watch at 65 and were sent off to play golf.
Yeah.
And they said, I'm used to authority. I'm used to credentials, my title. I'm bored. And many of them had unhappy experiences as a result. So we are part of the continuous reinvention generation because we have great longevity and we're not going anywhere.
Yeah. So tell me, you're obviously passionate about this. So tell me sort of your why. I mean, what is the why behind all this for you?
I'm going to be real candid here.
Please.
And that is that I came into the workforce in 1982.
Okay.
And there was a lot of misogyny. We were told we could do anything, but the structures, the infrastructure was not in place. And I learned some tricks. I learned some craft, and I learned the hard way how to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. And it heals me, I guess. It heals me to ensure that other women either don't have the experience or know how to manage through the experience.
Right. Yeah. To use your life experience to help them, in addition to obviously your expertise on, this longevity planning and general financial planning and retirement income planning and, and encore career advice and things like that. I'm guessing.
I want to make one very quick distinction.
Okay.
And that's that a lot of women in my cohort, we think about generativity. We think about mentoring younger women. I'm not even talking about younger women. I want to mentor my peers.
Okay.
And, a lot of that is as you get into your late 40s and early 50s, life comes at you fast. Whether it's parents declining or children launching or corporate employers who are manifestly disloyal and announcing, you have 30 days to decide to relocate to this city or we're packaging you. So do I even get to stay in the workforce doing my thing past 55 all the way to 65? Will I even get to that?
Right.
So I guess I acknowledge truth. I'm a truth speaker, but all of the things I'm describing are net new because 20 years ago, if I said to a client, oh, this is exciting. You're in a position to have a big 60th birthday party. You can take that cruise you mentioned and go around the world for a month. They would say, let's plan, let's make it happen. And now the answer to, can I celebrate a big birthday by disappearing for a month is, but my mother is still living in her house. I can't leave her for a month. And even though the kids are launched, so that window between childcare and elder care is shrinking dramatically. And that happened in 1.5 generations. That happened overnight.
Yeah.
It's not in the planning books. There's no how-to for it.
Right. Well, that was a lot that we talked about when we were talking about the place planning as well, because it's complex because we're not all living in the same communities as we once did. I mean, your life experiences, the choices you made were because of that, because you needed to be or wanted to be available and a resource to your stepdaughter, and obviously still have a business and serve others. So, yeah. So, how do you define longevity planning? You use that term a number of places, I think, in your offering. What would your definition of longevity planning be?
So there is a doctrine created by the World Economic Forum that indicates that longevity planning has some principles. They are, or I guess the longevity economy has some principles. But when I think about it as the intersection of financial planning, location planning, health planning, and purpose planning. Because community and purpose are incredibly important to our happiness and over time, our health. So thank you for asking that. I think that's important for people to be intentional. There's no right answer, but there is intentionality.
Well, and again, to your point, for the first time ever, we've had the opportunity to do this type of work because it's so needed in terms of helping people because we're living longer. And I think we're at a point in society where we get to make some choices that maybe previous generations didn't have an opportunity to make.
Yes.
You quote, or at least you mention in some of your writing, the new map of life that the Stanford Center of Longevity put out. Can you describe a little bit what that is? That really intrigued me, but I didn't have an opportunity to go real deep on it. Can you speak to what that is?
They published a report, and they have great initiatives. They published a report a couple of years ago indicating that in a 100-year life, you get to double back and loop back and do over and come in and out of the workforce. I'm saying you and I, grew up knowing that we would educate ourselves, we would go to work, and then one day perhaps we would retire. So we had 3 phases. But now we have a younger cohort that has an emerging adulthood phase between 20 and 30, where perhaps they're living for cash flow, maybe they're traveling, maybe they're finding themselves. Adulthood and commitment is not necessarily happening. We have people who are in the workforce long enough to want multiple careers. Who says you can't take a sabbatical, go back to school? Why does schooling have to end at 22? Why can't it, pick up again in your 30s. Obviously, there's biological limits to where you can push fertility and practical family planning. But if you think about living for 100 years and the opportunity that presents,
Right.
who's in a rush?
Right.
Who's in a rush? And I would say that just coincidentally, my own career and my own energy has informed my multiple careers. So I guess technically I've had three because I came by financial planning after a successful career as a technology sales executive for over 20 years.
Right. And all the studies show, obviously, that as we age, purpose matters a lot. And, I love Mitch Anthony's definition of work. He says work is anything that creates value for others and meaning for me. So for that definition, we'll work forever. You can work forever. And all the happiness literature indicates that you should.
You should work forever.
If your definition is creating value for others and meaning for you. If there's and that can be in different contexts. You've had 2 or 3 in your careers, and in addition to, supporting your daughter and your charitable interest and other things that that we do in complexity and as we do age a little bit. So one of the other things I noticed is, you've got you talk about the glide path at 50. Now I may be putting you on the spot here because I know this is a detailed, probably an hour seminar that you do on this material. But can you, and maybe you just did parts of it, but can you give us sort of the general idea of what this glide path at 50 concept is?
It will be my pleasure to do so.
Yeah.
I think that
and I'm sorry for interrupting, but the reason I asked the question is the people that we try to serve in this show, at least, are, kind of my people too, which are mid to late career professional people generally who have had world success on some measure, and now they're trying to figure out what's next.
Right.
And those questions, they start asking those questions in a serious way around 50 and up, generally. Mm-hmm. So anyway.
So
please.
You just encapsulated exactly what I was going to say, is that there's something about 50 that is magic about taking a good look at where you are, taking stock, and saying, where do I go from here? And for some people, it's out. For some people, it is more of the same. My own marriage ended at 50. And that's a difficult thing, even if you're the one who ends it.
Yeah.
It pretty much takes
Transitions
2 years.
Are hard. Yeah.
Yes. And at the same time, a father was declining with Alzheimer's. We are doing it all at once. What is that? Everything, everywhere, all at once. So everyone, everywhere, all the time is the way we're living right now. Having said that, at 50, it's time to probably do a retirement analysis, a retirement spend analysis. And I'm less interested in wealth and figuring out when it or what it will last to than I am in helping people understand how they live today, what their cash flow patterns are today, and what my models will say they can live on in retirement. In other words, let's live to 99. And based on your savings rate, based on what you have, not answering the question, when will I run out of money, or will I run out of money, but how can I be successful living to 99 on what spend? So how much can I afford to spend per month? And that number is either acceptable or it's not. And we need to then work backwards and say, are we going to save more? Are we going to work longer? Are we going to create more income? What are all of the levers that we can pull? And one of the things that I believe personally is healthiest is not playing with the models and saying, oh, you have to take your Social Security later or something like that. Although, that may be true. It may be the sensible answer plenty of times. It's more of a get a hobby. Get a hobby. If I hear that they fear that corporate employment may end before they are ready to end their corporate employment, I say it's time to create that LLC and set up your consulting shingle. You're under no obligation to use it. Just have it. If you have a passion, it's time to monetize that passion. Don't wait until you are facing something stressful to think about the hobby. I resist side hustle in favor of maybe passion project.
Okay.
Or next
Well, the
act.
words we use matter. I mean, the words we use absolutely
Yes,
matter.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think I will not demonize people who are artists or creatives. I had one client who, when we did the math, she was absolutely short for retirement. There were no two ways about it. A single woman with a house, probably feeding her house too much, if you know those people who put too much money into their houses.
Right.
But it made her happy. And she was a very successful fiber artist. And what I helped her realize is that if she started now, all she would need is the next 10 years to build up her fiber arts business to produce $25,000 a year.
Right.
Now, depending upon who's listening, that may be a big number or a small number, but it wasn't an insurmountable number.
Right.
To create a fiber arts business that would get you the extra $25,000 plus inflation between the ages of 65 and 75. And that just leaves you with the notion of, okay, how am I going to make sure I'm healthy to do this, right? So that lets you work on the other aspects. Another aspect of the glide path, I would say, is tax diversification. So our generation, again, we went to work and the IRA was just a few years old. Roth did not exist. So many of my clients did not understand the Roth 401k, did not understand the Roth IRA, did not understand the benefit of Roth dollars in retirement. So telling them, explaining to them that it's time to either convert or save or change or create some Roth dollars.
Yeah.
Create some brokerage dollars. All of the things, I mean, this is your stock and trade, so I realize I'm preaching to the choir, but it isn't new information. It's just they're ready to hear it. And in order for information to be internalized, it needs to come from the right lips to the right ears at the right time.
Right. So
and I'm speaking to my peers, they make themselves wrong. I say, stop making yourself wrong. If I want to be made wrong, I can call my mother. I'm sure you can call yours.
Yeah. I think the important takeaway for me on everything you just said is there's more than one right answer. There could be more than one right answer. So you're doing this glide path and being creative around your other gifts and resources, not just financial.
Yes.
So it's not just, it's just not, and of course, there are technical things that you talk about as well, obviously in planning the distributions around the taxes. If you've got all your money tied up in tax sheltered plans and, maybe it makes sense to pay a little bit more tax today and pay less over your lifetime than deferring it all till later. I mean, so all of that. So, but what I'm hearing, I think, is that it's really holistic. It's not just about solving for the number. There's a large financial institution that has an advertisement where you walk around with a big number, which I think is pretty silly. But it's more than just that, obviously.
It is, and I just want to point out that you and I are madly in love with what we do, and we can talk about it with passion all day. Normal people don't care. As a matter of fact, I bore my girlfriends to tears. And I think it's important to recognize that the goal isn't to have them know what we know. The goal is for them to get a good night's sleep and not live in stress. Because I will tell you, if I could sum up what I want Madrina Molly to do, it is to stop having these women stress themselves into illness over money, because I've seen it too many times. And it's unacceptable and heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, I love the fact that you're doing this from a place of encouragement, and you have choices. There are choices. You have a long runway. You have choices. but you got to face the reality too. But I think it comes from, the support I think is pretty impactful, I'm sure. So let's talk about the sandwich, because I think you and I had talked a little bit, and I think you used, I took one of your quotes that you just said, everything, everywhere, all at once. And I think you're referring to, being a caregiver for your parents, being a support for your adult children and their children, and your spouse and your business and your clients and is that what we're talking about here?
That is basically it. And so
Yeah.
I am, there was an old commercial. I'm dating myself now. I don't know if it made it down by you in Georgia, but it was Cy Sperling was not only the president of the hair club for men, but he was a member. And, I'm not only the president of my little club, I'm a member.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference. So as I indicated before, that window, that break where you can indulge yourself, travel the world, take cooking classes, whatever, be a grandmother, enjoy grandchildren maybe. That window is closing, and we need to manage to that carefully. I tell people, and I think this is part of the glide path, is I tell people to take their sabbatical earlier. It's like, you know what, if you're in your 50s and you have parents who are going the distance, maybe you need to take that break while they're still in their late 70s or early 80s and healthy, because in a few years, you may not have that same opportunity. So I listen very carefully for the people around my clients. And in Madrina Molly, I'm asking more questions about who they are and when they are in relation to the people around them.
Right.
I also think, and I want to go back to, I think it's a good opportunity to go back to Ryan Frederick, Right Time, Right Place,
Right.
and talk about how he says that only 4% of U.S. housing stock is accessible. So we have the wrong
I mean,
places.
livable for
right, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Livable.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily mean ADA compliant. I meant that part of the reason boomers can't downsize is because nobody's building the first floor master, first floor laundry ranch that they want. And I think that the builders possibly lack some imagination or are lacking in creativity for their market. Yes, I understand we've just come out of a terrible supply chain situation, but the boomers will pay for it if somebody will build it. And I think that while the media wants to demonize interest rates and hedge funds for buying up single-family housing, it makes a lot of sense for the millennial kids who are, or I should say the zillennial kids who are in that emerging adulthood and not ready to purchase. Move into the house, because it's going to help you with childcare. It's going to help you keep an eye on mom and dad, and it's going to give you a few more years to figure out where you're all going to be. I love to joke that I want a builder to build me the Ponderosa. I want a giant complex with a master house for the kids who are growing their family. We want a cottage, a guest house for the uncles, aunts, whomever's coming to visit. And then we can all...
Yeah.
Right. A little commune, sort of the Kennedy complex or Kennebunkport.
Right.
We want to meet up at the barbecue in the back. And share the backyard, and want to live multi-generationally. And I think that we are going to see that. So again, Ryan Frederick will talk about accessory dwelling units and zoning changes to allow you to build a tiny house in the backyard and either live in it while you give the kids the mundane house, or live in it while you shore up your retirement by renting your house, or basically a place for mom with you.
Yeah.
So we're going to get creative.
Yeah. Well, but short of building a commune, where your children move in the tiny house, or you move to the tiny
I
house,
moved
and
to the tiny
where
house.
your children move into the larger house with the grandkids. What are the other? I mean, what are the other strategies, or how do we address the challenge of your your client who is pulled in all these and my wife and all of her friends on her tennis team and everybody we know
Yeah, so
practically.
tell me more about them, because this is quite the group.
Well, I mean, look, I'm 61, and almost all of our friends are, as you described, in terms of we have parents that we're helping, not all local. We have children that are later launching, perhaps, for some of the reasons that you mentioned, and they need help with their grandchildren, and we have. For the first time, we have financial security, but we can't really go to Europe for a month if we wanted
Right.
to,
Right.
because I got to make sure someone's home to take care of, my mother-in-law, father-in-law, or somebody's got to be available for my daughter and her children because she still needs help getting them where they need to go from time to time. And,
So, I mean, you two are part of the cohort.
Correct. Yeah.
I think it's a conversation before it's a plan of action. But the conversation is, who are the resources? Where are the resources? What are the acceptable resources? Because one of the things that sets in for the elderly is fear. And I don't know if my mother's ever going to hear this, but boy, have I learned how to sell ideas to her and make them her own, or make her okay with ideas. But there is, so I guess sometimes it requires a little bit of work up front. It's a little like an intervention with a parent, especially if there are multiple siblings. And you can't say you're no longer able to maintain your house. You have to say, here's the cost of renovating the house to make you safe. We, as your children, can no longer live with the notion of you being unsafe. So this is the cost of what it would take to make you safe. This is the cost of relocating you.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I subtly did in framing it that way is that I positioned it as something you are doing to make me feel good. In other words, Mom, the reason we're doing this is because I fear. I'm living in fear for you, and you don't want me to live in fear for you. And it requires all of our talents as children and parents and siblings and whatever to manage these situations. I think there is a role of luck and in health and good genes. So I would say three things three thoughts on this. One is give a critical eye to your parents or the parents' longevity and understand if it is idiosyncratic or if you are traveling that path. And if you are traveling that path, prepare to travel that path. I am...
For yourself.
For yourself. I am preparing to be 97 one day.
Right.
Because my mother is 120% capable. And if I ever take her checkbook away from her, I think she'll be breathing her last. So we're never taking her checkbook away from her.
She's in control. Yep.
She's in control. It's good. I've got oversight, but she's in control. So be realistic about your own longevity prospects. And the second is be realistic about the 168 hours a week that you have. And partition that, schedule that, because that's part of setting healthy boundaries for yourself. And it doesn't have to be by the hour, but the idea is that some portion of the week is family, some portion of the week is partner, some portion of the week has to be me. And if there's not enough week for me, something's got to give because the stress level will become too great.
Right. Burnout. Yep.
Burnout is dangerous. And here you are, you're still a resource for everyone around you.
Yeah, you're the golden goose. And if the golden goose dies, everything falls apart. And so you've got to do self-care. Yeah.
The third, and maybe the most important, is this notion of family as a fixed expense. We And, I go and I visit grandchild number one, and I go to see her play a soccer game at school. And what do? I shtup her a little money, and she laughs as she takes it because she's, it's like, oh, grandma's sticking something in my hand again. And do I acknowledge it? I should account for it because it's not optional. I see a grandchild, I pay a grandchild.
Yeah.
I take my mother to the doctor and get her groceries. I'm not billing my mother for groceries.
Of course not. Yeah. But it needs to be in the planning is your point, I
It
guess.
needs to be in the plan. So one of the things that I think about, especially for my cohort, again, people who are well-to-do but not wealthy, the mass affluent, so high cash flow, want to be high net worth, may not get there, but maybe want to be well-to-do, have deserved to be well-to-do. Especially the first generation wealth, I think it's really important. It's not about being generous. Yes, one can be generous with one's time and with one's money, but it goes back to that being intentional. And making sure that, hey, family's a fixed expense. If you are paying N or plan to pay N dollars for children or parents, if you plan to help your child get into their first apartment, and it's not a one-time thing, it's I'm going to help with the bills a little bit because she has big student loans to pay, that needs to be part of the planning exercise. And I'm not sure if I'm speaking to the clients or if I'm speaking to other planners there when I say that.
Right. Well, I think both, and of course, in the communities that we find ourselves, we're fortunate that we've been blessed with some financial resources that we can solve some of these problems with a check, but so many people can't, or most people can't. And so it's not only a challenge between spouses and, figuring out the in-law thing and making sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody's getting the love and attention they need, that don't always see eye to eye and the stress related to that. And obviously you've got the financial implications. And so it's a pretty complex problem, but it's huge. And it's all in my backyard and all in my client base. And obviously, I just mentioned it has been in my life as well. So, so I do live it with your cohort. So let's talk a little bit about in our final moments here, Madrina Molly. So tell me how people can find out more about connecting with your group. I think you gave me a good explanation of the types of people that might be attracted to the information, but I want to make sure that people know how to get to your resources if they want to learn more.
Well, I thank you. So the website is madrinamolly.com. Madrina is Spanish for godmother, and Molly is my nickname. I'd love to tell you it's something romantic, but it's actually short for molybdenum. Okay. Let's not even go there. We have to discuss that with my husband. So madrinamolly.com. There is a community tab. There is a blog to subscribe to. The community has free shared wisdom circles. So the subscription is about access to CFP professional level knowledge, but there's also an opportunity to chat up that triple-decker club sandwich cohort, suddenly single, ground control for launching people. In other words, a variety of cohorts into which people can self-select. By the time this airs, it is my hope that I will have launched free education because, as I indicated, a big part of this is not pulling up the ladder. And I think there's some information about how to save and invest and when I say how to, I mean where to. Teaching people a little about time horizon and some basic concepts that finfluencers don't know, so they don't teach. And they're too busy selling products. And I have the opportunity to get some of these basics in the hands of the people just at the time when they can use them. So looking forward to those free courses as well.
Very cool. Well, you've been fantastic today. I appreciate all this information. There's just so much need, as you mentioned, for your audience, but also my audience, which again are which they overlap, obviously, mid to late career folks looking for their second act and what what matters and how to get their resources in place. Yours is just a subset that really focuses on these women, which I think is really cool because, again, we all come from our own worldview, from our life experience. So I can't possibly be quite as in tune to them as you are because they're your people. You're living it and have been living it, in your own life. But is there anything final you'd like to share before we shut it down today? Is there any final comments or thoughts you'd like to share?
I cannot thank you enough for having me as a guest. I want to remind people that longevity and the longevity economy is an opportunity, not a challenge. And I know that the media, negative news sells. It gets you clicking, it gets your eyeballs on it. But we have an opportunity to exercise creativity here. And I think that the flip side of this is that Instagram is full of edgy grandmas and grandpas who've solved problems creatively. And you and I are on the cusp of that. We're just gonna solve problems for our cohort.
Well, I love that you're putting out stuff in the world that can be useful to people because everyone can't afford a holistic, comprehensive wealth manager in the models that I have. Fortunately, our industry has gotten better, I think, in terms of more subscription-type planners. But again, they're not speaking the language potentially of your audience. So I thank you for again trying to create value for the world. So, well, thank you so much. This has been really, really, really helpful, and I really thank you for joining us today. Audience, thank you for joining us as well. I hope you found it interesting and informative and useful. Check out Madrina Molly, and we really appreciate your time. If you'd like to learn more about me or what we're doing, you can check out our corporate site at tandemgrowth.com. Obviously, you can give me some feedback as well by email at moneyandmeaning@tandemgrowth.com. This podcast is available at all the streaming services. And if you like what you hear or like to give us some comments, we'd love a review or some comments. So thanks for being with us today and have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Money and Meaning Show with Jeff Bernier, a show dedicated to help you gain the confidence and freedom to lead a life of personal significance and help you get your actions and resources in alignment with what matters most. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions or comments on the show, feel free to reach out to us at moneyandmeaning@tandemgrowth.com, or you can find us on the web at www.tandemgrowth.com. Jeff Bernier is the President and Chief Investment Officer at Tandem Growth Financial Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. This show is a production of Tandem Growth Financial Advisors, LLC. All information discussed is general in nature, is provided for informational purposes only, and should not be construed as specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Listeners should consult an attorney or tax professional regarding their specific legal or tax situation. Listeners should not rely on the content of this podcast as the basis for any investment decisions. A professional advisor should be consulted and/or independent due diligence should be conducted before implementing anything discussed in this show. While information presented is believed to be factual and up-to-date, Tandem Growth Financial Advisors, LLC, does not guarantee its accuracy, and it should not be regarded as a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. Tandem Growth Financial Advisors, LLC, does not make any representations or warranties as to the accuracy, timeliness, suitability, completeness, or relevance of any information prepared by any unaffiliated third party, such as guests on the podcast, and takes no responsibility for the same.